Welcome to the MVP Show. Today we have David Musgrave on the show. He's the Managing Director of Winthrop Developments Consultancy. He's a 5-time MVP, but before that he worked for Microsoft. And so on leaving Microsoft, it didn't take him long to land an MVP award for his specialty, which is Great Plains. And this episode is so interesting. I found it so interesting from, the years I've been involved in Dynamics, specifically CRM, but heard a lot about Great Plains. And to this episode, we talk about their history and what's involved. And so I think that if you want to get nostalgic, you'll find the show interesting. Full show notes can be found at nz365guy.com/245. Now let's hear from David. David, welcome to the MVP Show.
Thank you very much for having me. This is a first for me.
Great. Good to have you on the show. I've known about you for some time. I worked in Australia for 4 years, and of course, at that point, you were actually working for Microsoft.
Yes, I spent 13 years of my life without a soul at Microsoft, but it does come back when you leave.
And of course, your specialty. Actually, before we jump into your specialty, just for the audience, listeners, that type of thing, what part of the world do you live, work, and play in nowadays?
All right, so I am based in Perth. I'm originally English, if you wonder about the accent, but I've been in Australia since I was 13. And based in Perth, Western Australia. Luckily, it's a very safe place to be right now.
Yeah, you definitely seem to have COVID under control there.
Pretty well, even though we have a certain politician who's trying to take to the High Court and see if he can open our borders.
Is that right? Wow.
Yes.
I think
I won't get political on you.
Yeah, they just need to look at Melbourne and decide, is that really a smart thing to do?
Yes, exactly. Sadly, this whole pandemic can break out and spread very quickly, and all it takes is one idiot.
Yeah. So you've been in Perth that entire time since moving from the UK when you were 13?
Yes, I've moved around suburbs a little bit, but I've always been a south of the river person in Perth.
Wow, okay. And your claim to fame from a Microsoft business applications perspective is what?
Well, I've been in the GP world, so Microsoft Dynamics GP, or previously known as Great Plains. I've been in that world since 94, and I'm known for a number of things, but often making things that are not possible happen. But I suppose the biggest thing now is the products that I sell, which is GP Power Tools, which was actually created while I was a Microsoft employee as the support debugging tool. And that is now the product that I sell.
Right. Okay. So just give me a refresher on GP, because, I've always personally been in the Dynamics CRM side of things, and that's what I built my career around, and was always totally aware of ERP products, including GP, Solomon, Exapta, Great Plains, which of course GPSL and AX. Tell me, what is the GP ecosystem like now? Because I understand you're only one of two MVPs that focus in the biz app space on GP. Is that right?
It used to be 17, but it is now down to 2. Some of my other colleagues have got themselves Business Central certification now, so they're focusing more on Business Central. The GP ecosystem it's still going strong, but it is a mature product, and Microsoft is spending a lot of its time focusing on its new toys such as Business Central, and pushing those. But there is, for existing GP customers and even new customers, that GP is a better fit. There is still a very, very good mature product with a huge ISV ecosystem, and very powerful customization capabilities. So, GP is still a going concern, much to what the competitors would like to say, but they just enjoy spreading FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
So in recent times, I'd heard a figure, and correct me if it's right or wrong, or what your estimations of it, but GP still is a revenue stream in the vicinity of $800 million a year to Microsoft, and that's a sizable number.
It is. I'll be honest. I haven't heard the dollar signs. What I do know is that we've got over 40,000 customer sites. So it's primarily in North America, but there is sites around Europe, in the Asia Pacific region, and Latin America as well. So it is a worldwide product, even though the bulk of the customer base is based in North America, USA, Canada.
So is, from your knowledge of the ecosystem, which is, one of very few people that have the kind of insights that you would have, what did Microsoft strategically just pivot to, their core product of AX and then BC, and what happened to things like SL? What happened to, does SL still exist, or is it still in use? What about
I will say that I am focused on GP, but I can give you a little bit of a history lesson. So if we go back in time when Great Plains was Great Plains Software, and the product was Great Plains Dynamics, which is where the Dynamics name comes from. And Solomon had their own product, which at one stage they got into financial difficulty and were going to either go under or get bought out. And
did Microsoft acquire them, I take it?
No, Great Plains actually acquired it. So this is pre-Microsoft. Great Plains acquired their competitor because they decided that acquiring the client base and the product was better than either it disappearing entirely and losing that customer base, or someone else taking it up. So a decision was made that they actually acquired it. Then at a later stage, around 2000, Microsoft and Great Plains, it was a mutual agreement, but Microsoft purchased Great Plains, and that included Solomon. And then later on, meanwhile, in the European region, Navision, which had a product called Attain, and DamGuard, which had a product called Exapta. Navision bought DamGuard, so then Navision had both Attain and Exapta. And then Microsoft purchased Navision, so now Microsoft has made two purchases and had ended up with 4 ERPs. They did actually go through a process, and for those people who've been in the world a long time, they might have heard of Project Green.
Mm-hmm, yeah. I was going to ask you about that. So cool.
So Project Green was a feasibility study on whether or not it would be possible to move forward with a single product. And while they learnt lots and lots of things, Project Green was a success. But the answer to the question was no, we can't go to a single product. The existing products are too different and have too bigger individual ecosystems. And so Microsoft has ended up moving forward with all 4 products. They used to be branded as Microsoft Business Solutions - Great Plains, Microsoft Business Solutions - Navision. They dropped the Attain, and so on with Exapta. And then they decided that they needed to consolidate the branding, and they looked for a name. And the one they already owned was Dynamics. And that's when everything was branded under Dynamics. I actually have a Great Plains Dynamics jumper. I wore that to the office in Sydney one time just after the branding happened, just to remind all of the people who worked with the other products that the name came from Great Plains.
And so you said there was one other person that's an MVP. Who's that?
That's a colleague of mine based in Canada, Jen Kunst.
Ah, yes. Is she in Vancouver or Toronto side of things?
She's going to kill me if I get this wrong. I think it's Toronto.
Yeah, she's pretty active on Twitter. I know. I've seen. I follow her there. I'm gonna
go look this up now because Jen is going to kill me if I get it wrong.
Classic. So tell me about your transition out of Microsoft and into the MVP program.
Okay, so I mean, I worked in the GP world from '94 with a business that was originally SQL Technology, which was myself and my brother-in-law, and we were selling as a reseller. Then in '99, I left SQL technology and started my own business, which was Winthrop Dexterity Consultants. And I ran that for about 2 years before Microsoft decided, one, that when the Australian GST came in, I wrote all the code for that as a consultant or contractor. And they decided, one, that they wanted me to be within the organization to maintain that code initially. And two, they wanted to buy some of my products that I'd written, being the advanced security and field level security products. So at that stage, I was headhunted by Microsoft and became an employee. It was interesting. I was based in Perth at home, even though there is a Perth office. I only dropped in to show my face so that come Christmas parties, they'd know who I am. I had my manager in the Philippines and was paid out of Sydney. And I basically spent time, I moved within the organization, but mainly in support and services and consulting. And then I ended up being on the support team as the escalation engineer for many years. When they over time, my team came from 6 to 4 to 2, and then myself and a contractor, and then they didn't renew her contract, and it was just me, and the writing was on the wall. So I got called into the office for a meeting with my manager. Now, normally my manager's in Sydney, and I would always just have a teleconference with them. So getting called into the office for a meeting, which I then found out the room had been booked by HR, and it's like, oh, I know why I'm going into the office. And so I was made redundant, and I had a month of, this is one of the cool things with Microsoft, at least Microsoft Australia. I had a full month of access to all Microsoft's facilities in which I can use to either find myself another job, or in my case, I'd already decided I would be going back to my business that I had before Microsoft. I rebranded it as Winthrop Development Consultants, and I spent a month preparing to relaunch that while being paid by Microsoft. But so then back into then I left Microsoft, and so in the last few years while I was part of Microsoft, I was treated as an honorary MVP. Basically, all of the existing MVPs and even the people at Microsoft treated me as though I was an MVP, even though I officially wasn't, because I was an employee. So after leaving Microsoft, there were lots of calls, make David an MVP, make David an MVP. And the MVP system basically came back, or the award people came back and said, he can't be an MVP for at least 12 months after leaving, because it has to be based on 12 months of activity post Microsoft. So I left in October 2014. 1st of October 2015, email comes through and officially makes me an MVP, which was awesome. I wasn't doing anything different. I was still, while I was at Microsoft, and now I'm after Microsoft, I was still heavily involved in the community. I was blogging, I was answering forums. When given opportunity, I would present. So it was just nice to get that recognition and be officially branded, no longer an honorary MVP, but now a real MVP.
And so, when you saw the decline internally, was that in Bob Stutz's era that decision was made, that GP was no longer going to be something that Microsoft were going to invest R&D money in?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, the name, I'll be honest, the name's not all that familiar. But then I don't necessarily, I was very much focused, and I probably still am quite focused on the GP world, and I'm not that interested in what's happening with, beyond the GP world. I believe there's enough life left in GP for me to happily work with GP till I retire. The thing is that there is still R&D money going into GP. There is still new versions coming out. I'll be honest, there is a much smaller development team, and because it's a mature product, the level of changes we're seeing are very much, the final 20%, that the tweaking of the product, and most of it is actually now based on customer feedback, because the product itself has everything that it pretty well needs, and so it's just the final changes that they're making and improvements. But I mean, it has web capabilities, and it's just that Microsoft needed to focus moving forward, and sadly GP was not the one they decided to focus on.
Yeah, it makes sense. As in, I assume that with so many products that did a similar thing in the ERP space, or that the market would consider as ERP, they needed to kind of decide where their future was, right? Even though GP was so successful.
Yeah, well, GP is still a cash cow to them, and I find it very frustrating that they don't mention it anywhere, because I know that they don't want to necessarily make it the lead product, but it should still have get some of the limelight, because they're killing the cash cow by not keeping it alive, and I might get in trouble for saying this, but in my opinion, if people get scared by the marketing and the fear, uncertainty, and doubt spread by competitors, if they decide that they need to move away from GP, which I straight away say there is no reason to move away from GP, but if they decide, then they will go back out to the tender process and they're going to look at competitors, and by doing that, Microsoft risks sending its customer base elsewhere.
The penetration outside of America, I know it was very popular. Fargo, is that where it was kind of based from my knowledge in America?
Yes. So Fargo is actually the biggest Microsoft campus outside of the Seattle Redmond campus.
Wow, I did not know that.
And it's the birthplace of Great Plains. That in fact, I mean, if you look at Fargo, it's in the middle of the food belt, the Great Plains area of North America, which is where the name comes from. And the original logo is a sun with wheat logo. I've actually got a blog post on my blog. So quick plug, winthropdc.com/blog. There's an article on there which has all the different logos for Great Plains throughout the years. And it shows how they went from the red sun, well, actually originally an orange sun, but then they went to a red sun with a wheat logo. And later on, they spent a lot of money to design a brand new logo, which the day before it got released, a email went around, and which basically makes it look like the back of Homer Simpson's head.
Is that right?
Yes, it's a very funny thing, but it's still a stylized sun and wheat, but it's yellow and blue sky with a yellow sun and wheat, and it looks like you've got a magnifying glass on the back of Homer Simpson's head.
Classic. How interesting. And I bet you've got many stories of your time and the journey with a piece of software like this.
Yeah, I've been in this world a long time, so it's there's a lot of history in the GP product, and there's a lot of fun things. They used to have a sound sample when you started GP that said, "Welcome to Dynamics," and I found out it was the wife of one of the developers who did that sound sample. It's possible, if you want to actually grab that WAV file and it will play it again.
Wow. I had no idea. And I didn't know that so much of, my world and Dynamics CRM had originated, and, from a branding and all that perspective, from GP. No idea.
That they already owned the name. So, because, they were looking for what name to use, and they already owned Dynamics. So Jen comes from Ontario, so...
Ontario, Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Very good. Well, look at this. Like, we've already consumed 20 minutes as time has flown so quickly. What does being an MVP mean to you nowadays?
It's, I would continue doing what I do regardless of whether I was an MVP or not. I do what I do because I love it. And the MVP is just a recognition of that. There are some benefits of being an MVP, but it's just nice to be recognized. But it wouldn't change that much for the way I do things, because I do what I do because I love the community, and I love the product. And, I know that sometimes I might preempt you here, but sometimes I get asked how can I be an MVP? And I've had people come to me and say, "Oh, my aim, my goal is to be an MVP." And I've actually told them, if your goal is to be an MVP, you probably won't get there. If your goal is to help people in the community and use your knowledge and share your knowledge and give that away on the forums and on the blogs, you will be recognized if you do enough to get that recognition. That's how you become an MVP. It's a reward for what you've already done. It's not a goal.
David, it's been so interesting talking to you. Time to wrap up, and I always like to have some random questions on wrap up, which can be answered any way you really want through any lens that you want. Are you ready for your 6 questions?
Okay.
Okay, here's the first one. What opportunity have you given up but you regret in hindsight?
Oh, wow.
Selling your Microsoft shares too early?
I actually... I have sold some shares recently. I sold some shares when it was 135.
So you did hold out till it was well into Satya's term before you sell, which I think would have been a smart move.
Absolutely. I sold a few more at the 200 mark. I never thought it would break the 200, and I had set a rule for 200, and it sold some there. I still have quite a lot of my Microsoft shares, but I have sold some of those. I'm building a house. I need some money.
If you could be an instant expert on a new subject, what would it be?
Instant expert. I think I love my GP world, and I am very knowledgeable in the tools and product development environments around that. If I could instantly get up to speed and be the bee's knees on Business Central, maybe I would do that.
Gotcha. Are you a cat or a dog person?
As a kid, we always had a cat. Then when my kids came around, we are now dog people. I have a mad dog that came from an Aboriginal community some 1,300 kilometers north of Perth. And while you can take the bush out of the dog, you can take the dog out of the bush, you can't take the bush out of the dog.
Wow, that's so cool. What stereotype do you completely live up to?
I am a geek. I like D&D. I like playing with Rubik's Cubes. I like Lego. I'm a geek.
Awesome. Would you rather be too hot or too cold?
I actually would be... I believe that it's actually interesting. If you get too hot, there is a limit to how much you can take off before it becomes illegal.
That's brilliant. I love it. What's the best gift you've ever received?
The best, sorry?
Gift you've ever received. Yeah.
Wow. There's a number. If you can call having kids gifts, they've been awesome. In 2017, my youngest had a bout with Burkitt's lymphoma, and he's all good now. In fact, only recently he was told by his oncologist that he doesn't want to go see him again. So, so I suppose the fact that we got through that episode of our lives with child intact is also a gift.
David, it's been great having you on the show. If people want to reach out to you and or even follow your blog content or any content you're creating, where's the best places for them to find you?
I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. I have my blog. It's all Winthrop DC. So at Winthrop DC for Twitter, winthropdc.com/blog, winthropdc.com just for the website. I'm very easy to find. You just search me and my name, and you might even find that video of me breakdancing.
I hope you enjoyed that show. Full show notes can be found at nz365guy.com/245. I'm your host, Business Applications MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. One of the things I do each year is run a 90-day mentoring challenge. And if you're interested in taking your career to the next level, you may want to get involved in this free 90-day challenge. I'm open right now to intakes for the next program. If you go to my website and just look up mentoring in the navigation there, it'll take you to the expression of interest form if you want to get involved. Anyhow, have a great day, stay safe out there, and see you same time next week.